My name is Sheila Smith from Cardiff. The first work camp I did was in 1986, and it was in what was then West Germany, in a nearest town called Würzburg, southern Germany. And I think the reason I did it, I'd never heard of anything like this, anything like international work camps or international volunteering. But I saw a small article in the local newspaper in Cardiff promoting work camps, promoting what is now UN Exchange. And there was an offer, I think they offered a particular project to work on the restoration of a castle. And I just thought, yeah, why not? It sounds interesting. I had just finished college, I had no job. I didn't know what I was going to do. I mean, I'd say in the 80s, not many people did that kind of thing as well, so it was quite different. So yeah, I think it was just adventure and excitement. That was in 1986. Then I joined, I was the leader of a work camp in Wales a couple of years later. I did 2 in the United States, China, Vietnam, India. Well, that's about 6 or 7. Yeah, so 6 or 7 over many years. Yeah, the first one obviously had a big impact. I mean, it got a massive impact on me. I mean, it changed my life completely. And I think that first experience, it was a big work camp we were about 30 volunteers, mostly European, a couple of Canadians, and a guy from Algeria, but otherwise Europeans. And it was that European experience, I think, for me was massive. It was the first time to travel outside the UK within Europe. I had been to Turkey and Egypt, but it was the first time to be in another European country. And I think it was that sense of Europeanness in a way, with French volunteers, Spanish volunteers, German volunteers from both sides of the then divided Germany. And I think it was that community, that sense of community. I have a strong memory of the work camp that I led in Wales, because that was quite unusual. It was we took a group of elderly people on holiday. They quite locally. They were from Pontypridd, which is just north of Cardiff, and we took them to a holiday centre just to the west of Cardiff. But they were all quite infirm and with some almost disabilities, and it was to give them a break, but also to give a break to their carers. And big changes that happened in a small time for them. I remember a very small old lady who, she was very withdrawn, she didn't speak very much and she didn't move very much, but by the end of the week she was out of her wheelchair, she was walking a little bit, going up some stairs, and it was just those tiny changes which made me realise that we could make a difference, and we did make a difference. I began to work for UN Exchange when I came back from that German work camp. As I said, I didn't have a job. Youth unemployment in this country was very, very high at that point. The government was running youth unemployment programmes, and UN Exchange was employing, it had 1 member of staff at the time, but it had 8 people working under the youth employment training programme, and that's how I joined. So I came in for I think it was a 1-year contract, part-time for 1 year. That was in 1987, and then towards the end of my year contract, the permanent member of staff left, and I luckily got her job, and then, so that was 88, and then I stayed working for UN Exchange until 2016, so that's how it changed my life. I mean, it was 28 years of crazy madness running this organisation, but what a pleasure, what a privilege, what a stress. I think it introduced me to a set of values that probably I had inside me, but wasn't necessarily aware of, concerning community and relationships between people, and the power as well, the power of people doing things together, for the power to change things, and how small things can make a big difference, make a very permanent difference in a lot of ways. And then basic human values of being good to each other, of positivity and optimism, and always believing there's a solution to something, there's a way to achieve something, or there's a good outcome that can come from everything, than many anecdotal stories from volunteers. I mean, there's one volunteer in particular, I don't know if you've met him, but Chaland Barron, he lives in Penarth, which is very close to here, and he volunteered with UNA for probably about 8 years, from about the age of 17 or 18, when he had a lot of problems. Callum, by his own admission, had a lot of problems in his personal life, and he was introduced to UNA by a youth worker. I think he joined a work camp in Italy first, and then, anyway, fast forward, he then did EVS, European Voluntary Service, in Lithuania for 6 months. He did a short project in Poland, I think, for 3 months. After all of these things that he did with us, he basically said, in a nutshell, I think it was as I was leaving UNA Exchange, he said, if I hadn't done these things, if UNA hadn't introduced me to these things, I'd either be dead or in jail. And that still, when I say it, it makes me, oof. I think nowadays when people look at this kind of opportunity or activity, they think Thailand or Tanzania or Mexico, but I always did, and I always would recommend Belgium or France first, because it's close, it's not so culturally massively different, so it's an easier first step, and it's easy to get into. You may be dealing with the culture shock of a work camp, but you're not necessarily dealing with the culture shock of such a different society. So I think I would always, and I think any young person, if they started to do this kind of thing at the age of 17 or 18, they've got many years of opportunity that they can carry on doing these things. And it's a simple thing you can do. It's very accessible, but it's very meaningful as well. After so much time, 30 years, then that's obviously a big part of my life. I think virtually everybody I know and have in my life, I can say, has had a connection to this world, to the work camp volunteering world, and I'm so rich because of that. I think there's more need for this kind of work now than in all my 28 years that I was involved. I think what's happening in our societies, particularly in Europe, particularly in the United States, I think is quite frightening, is quite worrying, is quite depressing in some ways, but I think it points to the need for this kind of work more than ever. I think, and in a way I'm quite frustrated to be outside the organisation now, because what our communities need is much more diversity, much more in exchange and interaction between different people of all sorts of differences. On one hand, I think that's a massive challenge for the movement. It's also a massive opportunity for the movement as well. If it can find its way into those places, to those people, then I think it has more relevance now perhaps than, not more than it's had before, but a different kind of relevance, but it's very needed at the moment. So it's an interesting time. I mean, I think the work camp movement is resilient and strong and resourceful, so it will find its way, but I don't think it's the easiest of times. I think in my years I enjoyed some very, let's say, easy times when our governments were very supportive and the European Union was very put resources into many progressive ideas for our kind of work, and now it's different. So it's tough, but I think, as I say, I think it's a movement which is constantly regenerating with new younger people, younger ideas, younger ways of doing things. So it will survive and it will change, but